Yes.
Yes, yes.
I'm getting slightly deaf, Sharon.
As long as you can hear a little bit.
It's an age thing, aye.
Meldeneach Pushchen.
Meldeneach.
Meldeneach, maar we huiger is.
Tillit is son kog plena med smimationer. Vig me var, jag fattig jul i Rutsebi med smimationer. If I'm spared and well.
Aha. Mis no björn no slan, could you had him a bahas?
Was it echt gertje wat die jul? Ik me gaan voorstoffelen zo maar hechting met smimationer.
Aha. Oh, should snog. No.
Ah, was it dan wat die jul?
Gina Hoshach, could you can intention?
Okay, I think we can start because we have a lot to cover today. Welcome all. I'm Aire,
Hello.
and I've recently joined the Northwest Historical Society as the project officer for this well-being project. On screen you will see the aims of this project. We are interested in seeing how research into Gaelic heritage and digital practices can help the community's well-being. Now, Jen Robertson, who's the chair of the society, has a few words to share with us.
Good afternoon. Uist Robertson, I'm chair of Community Institute and of course newly elected councillor, so another 5 years of aggravation if I'm spared and well, no doubt, with all the cutbacks. I was actually thinking back to why I got involved with the community in the first place. I used to attend on the periphery in a sense, but it was more or less the meetings were in Tlechersavag, and that's at that point we had decided to look at extending the Tlechersavag to have a bigger community space because all our artefacts are stored in an old school in Tornham in Beckela, which is quite difficult for access, and we can only get access when the Heritage Office from the Corn is there. So then we discovered when we tried to get plans to Tlechersavag that there's a flood issue, of course, at Tlechersavag in terms of insurance and so on. So we had the opportunity at that time, Carnish School, where I went in my formative years, was closed, and we got funding from the Scottish Land Fund to purchase both the schoolhouse and the school itself. So we've been trying since then to get funding to do some work on the school. That's proved rather difficult over the last probably 3 years, but we keep trying, and we are in what they call the Levelling Up Fund with the council at the moment for 350,000, and hopefully going for the Scottish Government Regeneration Fund as well this year. So hopefully we will get something done in the school. Alistair here was successful in getting funding from MGS, wasn't it, for the outdated heating we have in the school, which is probably one of our main priorities, to do something with the heating in the school. So we were successful in that funding, and we're hopefully work has started in doing some work on the car parking at the side of the school as well. So, and I suppose over the last 2 years we've not met really as much as we would have liked because of COVID. It's only in the last couple of months that we've been meeting quite a bit. We've got quite a lot of volunteers actually. So I think we're in a good position from that sense when I look around other various groups in North Uist who actually struggle for members. So we're quite lucky in that, and some of them have been very active around the school itself, both inside the school in tidying up and outside around the garden area. So I feel quite positive in terms of community input at the school itself, but we need to use it more, and that's our ambitions going forward. I've done quite a bit of work with universities in the past, I have to say. With the council, I've been involved in the climate change group, which works with a number of universities, and I think collaboration between communities and universities is the way to go, although I did have some difficulty with the introduction of Miro boards and things like that. It was not something I found that easy to follow, but we're getting there slowly. So I think that a healthy partnership between ourselves and, if I can call the various academics, is going to be quite useful, actually. I'll leave it to that, Mary. You told me to be brief.
Thank you very much. That's lovely. Well, we are hoping for considerable volunteer involvement in this project. It will only be successful with a lot of help, but we are very lucky in having worked last year quite considerably with universities to plan the project. So I'd first like to introduce Jess Wood, who lives in Lewis, but is attached to Aberdeen University. I don't think Heather May Morgan is with her, but Jess is going to introduce what she's hoping to do with a group of volunteers who may be interested from the Aberdeen University part. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you very much for inviting me to take part in your project. So I'm just going to share my slides. We practiced this yesterday, the other day with Sharon, so I'm hoping that I've managed to. It'll work. Is that it working?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll just put on slideshow from beginning. Okay, perfect. Right. I will just move on. I'll try. We've been allocated 15 minutes each. I will try and stick to my time and go through this so that the other speakers have an opportunity as well. So hello, yes, I am Jess Wood. Obviously my formal name or Christian name is Jessica. That's obviously when I'm in trouble, so I'd rather be called Jess. And I work for the University of Aberdeen, and our area for the project with North Uist Historical Society is essentially working with community members and obviously volunteers, as many volunteers we can get, to meaningfully evaluate the value of heritage, culture and language on well-being for the community. So again, a little introduction to myself. So that's a photo of myself and my family, Heather. And if you do have an opportunity to come or would like to come to the workshop that we're running tomorrow, which I will chat about in some slides at the end, you'll have the opportunity to meet Heather in person. But just a little bit about myself, so you know a little bit about me. So I'm a junior researcher. I completed my master's back in November 2020, and I moved to Lewis. So this summer, that'll be 2 years with my 2 sons and my husband, who's completing his remote and rural GP training here in Lewis. Heather, I've worked with for a number of years, and she's a lecturer in health sciences at the university and has been working in community-based research for over 15 years, with 10 years specifically in healthcare research. And we're both interested in how community connections, culture and heritage can contribute to people's mental well-being, and how we can measure that in a meaningful way with community members as well. We'll also have some students working with us through the life cycle of the project, helping with activities. We've had one intercalating medical student actually has done some research for us, and she will be involved in some of our subsequent workshops. And as I said, we may have some other students helping us with some of the other workshops through the life cycle of the project, who will introduce you as we go through. So I think the first thing I really wanted to chat a bit about is what we mean by mental well-being. So there are lots of definitions, and these are just a sample really, and it's something that we will explore in our workshops, in our first workshops with community members who'd like to take part. But the Ideas Fund on their website describe it as: you take care about yourself and for yourself. You look after your physical and emotional health by eating well, sleeping well, exercising, connecting with others, and enjoying yourself. You can cope with the stress of life, and you can work productively, whether that's in a job, in education, or through chores and hobbies. And the Hot Works Centre for Wellbeing also describe it as, simply put, it's how we are doing as individuals, communities, and as a nation, and how sustainable that is for the future. What influences well-being? So that's another part of well-being. So the World Health Organization find that there's lots of things that influence our well-being, and they have listed several of these here. But I think the New Economics Foundation put it more simply for us, and they identify 5 key areas that contribute to our well-being, and that is connection, being active, taking notice, keep learning, and to give. And I think those are really good ways of describing it. So another area, I suppose, is just why do we think, why is well-being important, essentially? So there's a lot of research that has been done, and it's found to add years to your life, improve recovery from illness, reduce potential for developing illness. It's associated with some positive health behaviours in adults and children. So a lot of interventions and studies looking at smoking cessation have found that success for that is influenced by your mental well-being. It's associated with broader positive outcomes. So, for example, if you have a friend, neighbour, or someone close to you that has positive mental well-being, there's a 63% chance that you also have positive. Your mental well-being will improve as well by association. And it has implications for decisions for patient care and practices and services and treatment decisions. And it can also affect decisions made at a local level, and implications for and costs for treatments, and ultimately can reduce the healthcare burden at a national level if you're looking at it from that aspect. So what works to improve well-being? And then how can it be provided? So there's various ways that well-being interventions can be provided to people, including social interventions. And this is done through what's described as social prescribing. And I'm sure many of you are probably already familiar with that term. And it's essentially helping patients improve their health by connecting them to community services available to provide that. And listed on this slide, there's just a lot, just really to give you a bit of a taster of how these social interventions can then have an impact on a national level. So because of these wonderful social prescribing interventions and the impact that's had on well-being, it's actually resulted in a national scheme of social prescribing being rolled out across England. And it's also impacted on clinical guidance as well. Some research in social interventions in physical activity have now meant there's been a change in clinical guidance about how mild to moderate cases of depression are now treated. So instead of going straight to prescribing antidepressants, clinicians are recommended to prescribe exercise in first instance. And that is based on work that's been done at community level. And that has led to change at national level. So it's really showing the opportunity to improve health and well-being at primary care level, and not just impacting local community, but how that can then impact nationally as well, which is quite exciting. So heritage and their contribution to mental well-being. So that's really obviously essentially what we're wanting to do with our project here. And there's some approaches to improving mental well-being extend beyond medical solutions. into new domains. And one of them was obviously heritage. And the Heritage Alliance suggests that heritage offers an opportunity for connection, activity, mindfulness, learning and giving because of shared histories, identities, and its ability to connect people. And there's been a lot of research on how heritage can contribute to people's mental well-being in a positive way by reducing stress and anxiety, increasing our positive mood and self-esteem, increasing resilience, reducing loneliness by improving social functioning and feelings of social inclusion. And its positive impact on well-being can also be sustained up to a year after involvement in a well-being heritage activity in one study. And a key theme from that specific study also found that people in a focus group felt simply they enjoyed taking part in the projects that made them feel human. The National Trust Places That Make Us findings also found that the amygdala, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, was activated in people by any place deemed special by an individual. And their subsequent report found a link between having a deep-rooted emotional connection to place and having a better sense of well-being. There's a growing evidence base that heritage can have a positive impact on mental health and well-being, and it's growing every day. So another area, obviously, that as part of the study that we'd like to help explore is how language can contribute to mental well-being, and that of obviously the use of Gaelic. There isn't a lot of published research in this area and its impact on mental well-being, but there has been a lot of research in the actual language learning, and biolingualism specifically in general can improve cognitive health and have positive impacts on both children and adults, including obviously delayed onset of dementia and focused attention. And there has been some evidence that links biolingualism to wider well-being of children. However, the research is quite limited on what aspects of bilingualism contribute to well-being. Further studies conducted on the use of native language and bilingualism have shown its contribution to people's emotional well-being and how it can promote high self-esteem through a sense of belonging and being linked to cultural identity and one's self-worth. And a fluency in native language can obviously influence social interactions. Really being the lack of fluency in a native language can obviously create some social barriers with communication. So obviously having a confidence in native language will have social benefits and allow connections in one's culture. And it also is associated with improving wider health outcomes. And this was seen in a study in Australia on Aboriginal native language use. So this emphasis on the connection of language to culture and heritage, I believe, is pretty well illustrated, I think, by this quote from the UNESCO on the right here. Language are the most powerful instruments for preserving and developing our tangible and intangible heritage, and all moves to promote the dissemination of mother tongues will serve not only to encourage linguistic diversity and multilingual education, but also to develop fuller awareness of linguistic and cultural traditions throughout the world and to inspire solidarity based on understanding, tolerance and dialogue. And so the last thread of the study is looking at how digital technologies can help facilitate mental well-being. And this again is an area where there's a lot of research emerging now in this field. There's a lot of positive results in previous research of the use of virtual reality for people that suffer from dementia and its ability to provide support for adults living in residential healthcare. And it's also seen to have a role in providing aid to support pain management with women with breast cancer and to help relieve anxiety as well. The literature is limited in its role in heritage wellbeing interventions. However, the Heritage Alliance recognise in their report they've they've noted that it could be used as a potential facilitator to reduce physical barriers of exclusion for obviously members of the community that are unable to access the physical sites in person, but still allow them to have an immersive experience. And certainly there was a lot of work conducted during the first lockdown with a lot of heritage groups looking at ways of connecting. And Wessex Archaeology created a well city in partnership with Salisbury Museum, using digital tools for allowing people to connect with heritage sites. And they actually collected data on mental well-being. As far as I'm aware, the data has not been published, but feedback has been positive of the project so far from users. So where are we now? So there are concerns, unfortunately, that the COVID-19 pandemic has affected well-being nationally, and unfortunately this is true. The latest report from the Office for National Statistics has found that personal well-being, using the 4 key indicators they use, has deteriorated. So you can see here on the right, satisfaction with life, feeling worthwhile, and overall happiness have reduced, and this sense of anxiety has also increased. And obviously many community groups, such as the North Uist Historical Society, are hoping to address this need for wellbeing in their communities, and have certainly done a lot of work during the COVID lockdown. And what we're hoping that our work will do will build on this work and support the ultimate aims of the wider project through working with community members to pilot and use an agreed survey evaluation co-designed with members, and explore the impact of the heritage and language activities planned on members' sense of well-being, and to develop a simple and meaningful methodology which could be adapted and scaled up to use across the other projects and activities, with the idea being obviously having a sustainable resource for the North Uist Historical Society, a wellbeing and heritage hub for you in the community. And most importantly, obviously, it's putting community members at the centre of these activities. So how are we going to do it? And I'm just aware that I've just gone over the time slightly, so hopefully I won't be too long. It's really just to go through what we're planning to do. So the first workshops that Damari mentioned very briefly, the first one's tomorrow, and we're also running it, so that'll be in person at Carnage School, and then we're hoping to run it virtually on the 10th if people aren't able to meet in person tomorrow. And what we'd like to explore in that first workshop really was first to kind of meet each other and introduce ourselves in person, but also find out what wellbeing means to community members and invite people to share their lived experience of that, and explore a little bit about activities in lockdown. And in our second workshops, we'll reflect on what we found out in the first workshops to then look at developing together an acceptable evaluation process survey for the activities. And through the life cycle of the project as well, we'll have subsequent workshops where we'll look at how we've gathered and evaluated our chosen community evaluations, discuss, review and reflect on the findings. And I think that's me. I think the other thing I was going to say was, I think if we have got spaces available, and Sharon will keep me right, but she was going to put her contact details, I think, in the chat, if people did want to join tomorrow, because hopefully there's still spaces.
I think, yes, I think there are 2 spaces left.
And I suppose if you're not able to attend the person, there's the virtual one as well, yes, available on Tuesday evening.
And various people have said they would like to attend that. They're either away or not happy to meet in a group, immunosuppressed. So thank you very much, Jess. There's a lot of information there.
Yeah, I was going to say I can make the slides available after if people want to digest and go through that. But it was just to kind of give an overview that we know these activities work, yes, and we're just wanted to explore that with you.
Well, I'm very excited by this. It's very close to my heart. And I'd like to say you've worked really hard with us on this, with the steering group of Amanda and John. It has been open to any trustee or volunteer, but as I say, we've been so grateful for the experience of John Gillis and Amanda Woods. I know I get those two muddled up sometimes. So thank you, Jess. And we'll move on now. I see the project as like a Celtic plait, really, 3 strands which weave themselves together. I'd like to come on to Gordon, who really doesn't need much introduction to those of us here. He has documented highlights of our work, of Community's work, on Gwyn Nanyellan, his culture capture website, and he's certainly been a huge source of support to me. I haven't any museum experience really, or experience in this kind of way, and it was Gordon who really helped us in Community in the early stages. Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you. Really, taspalat gamor sunshine. I mean, Jesus totally the screen share right, Kabeshi. You seeing my screen?
Yes.
Grand. Okay, so I'll move to slideshow and from the beginning. Cash, so you should have a. I need to go from the beginning, so I need to go back a bit. Thank God, Vadi. Imi Mirak, and Gnatolichik, the Koramakam, the Kopit Kuchi, the Community's Uist to the East. How she project Nagai and O'Connell, like Harris at the Plianachin, I guess she told us more gone. The Kopit Kuchi to the East. It's a great pleasure to be working with Community Uist to again on a joint project through Island Voices. So this partnership that you referred to has been going for a while. I've got a few slides, mostly pictures, which I'll talk about, and hopefully over the piece give an idea of the kind of rough plan we have for running workshops. I say it's a rough plan, and that's quite deliberate, because it's going to depend, obviously, to a large extent, on responses and reactions from those who wish to take part. And I just want to emphasize that it is flexible in that way, not coming into this with an established idea of what it is that we're going to do. Who am I? Well, it's me and Gideon Sarke, ik Anne McClellan from Ballamore, North Uist. Very grateful to Community Uist for this lovely picture in the top left here from 1924, Paywell School. And you can see Anna Hiani there in the front row. And that's her blown up a bit obscure perhaps. So that's my background. There she is, graduating from Glasgow University shortly before the war. The first in her family so to do, whether male or female. And then in her professional life, she became a teacher trainer and spent time in India. And the shadowy figure you can see behind her is George Reginald Wells, the man she met and married while in India. And so those are old pictures. Some newer ones, slightly newer ones, are ones I took myself in the 70s as a teenager. And you can see other members of the family here. Morag Hiani, the eldest daughter in the family, my mother's oldest sister, married to Don Ellen McIntosh, Don Alan McIntosh from Hesketh, and they lived in near Loch Soundy. They had a croft there, and we used to visit them in the summer. And over here on the left, helping Donald Allen with the peats is Norman my mother's youngest brother, Taramatiani, who went away after the war, but did eventually come back and spent his last years in Uist with Donald Allen and Borak on the croft. And there you can see elements of the environment around them at the time. So those are the personal connections, if you like. Uist mentioned the importance of community and university cooperation and collaboration, and that's something which I very much endorse. So we've got the Island Voices Guhananyelan banner at the top there as a kind of umbrella, if you like, and a bridge, the way I see it, between community and college. And along the bottom, we've got Solmorostek, of course. It was out of a European project started in Solmorostek that the Guhananyelan project emerged. Also connecting, of course, with CEUT, the Inter-University Gaelic Research Partnership, which has been in the news recently, and the new kid on the block, which is directed by the same director, Crawford O'Gilligan, in UHI itself, the Language Sciences Institute. So those are the institutional connections. And just to repeat the importance, in my mind, of ensuring good communication and collaboration between community and university as this project moves forward. The focus from our point of view is going to be on Gaelic, and Gaelic in the Hebrides in particular. And there are various ways of looking at that. One is from a numbers game point of view. The 2011 census reinforces probably a sense which most of us share of the importance of the Hebrides, North Uist amongst them, of course, in relation to Gaelic. If you look at figures for Scotland as a whole, or even for other parts of the Highlands and Islands, then the share of Gaelic speakers within the surrounding community is really rather small. It's only when you get to the Outer Hebrides that you see this pattern where there is still a really substantial number of proportion of Gaelic speakers within the local community. So that points to the strength of Gaelic in the Hebrides, which is fine, but we need to balance that with an approach to numbers which looks in really a lot more detail than you can get from a couple of questions on the census. And that's where this 2020 research report comes in on the Gaelic crisis in the vernacular community, which was conducted by colleagues in CEUT. And the point, I suppose, I would want to make there is that we need to have this solid baseline of real knowledge in order to build something from it. And that's what the Gaelic Crisis Report offers in terms of giving us real figures, as it were. So in a program of workshops, we would want to start with that and have the opportunity to actually quiz that report quite closely. The numbers game is one way of looking at the language. It's not the only way, and it certainly shouldn't be the only way. And I suppose what I've tried to capture in this next slide is this notion of language capture and curation, slightly jargonistic term perhaps. What it really points to is the importance of recording and sharing of recordings, so that we get a picture of how the language works in today's world, looking at the way it's used, how it's used in the community, how it may or may not be changing, so on and so forth. And we've been doing that through Island Voices, I suppose, for the past 15 years or more. And this top left collection here of Island Voices recordings is how we started, with short documentaries and then on local events and local organizations, complemented with interviews with real people in the community who had something to do with those events or organizations. So that's how we started, with interviews made by project staff, but moving on swiftly to more of an emphasis on community contribution of those kind of recordings, whether that's from community groups or individuals. Like in terms of groups, we've mentioned the Communiarty Uist already. The Great War Project was one such of those, where people went out with iPads, Archie among them, I recall, and making recordings with local people. Bonnie Prince Charlie was one we did with Stordus Uist, similarly in similar style, but also significant contributions from particular individuals, notably among them, of course, Norman MacLean. We've got loads of recordings which Norman himself contributed after he came and settled back in Uist. And that's an approach which we've been following through Island Voices for some time, and it's one which has been taken up elsewhere as well. And this graphic on the right here is taken from, it's a screenshot from the Language Sciences Institute web pages, where you can see some of the collections which are being accumulated and shared through that site. So that's another way, and an equally important way, of looking at languages and looking at Gaelic. Looking at Gaelic, I want to emphasize here that that's the focus, but it's not an exclusive focus in any way. And we want to make this as inclusive an exercise as possible through support for learners or for non-speakers at all. And we've done that in the past through the development of various technical supports. The one on the left here with the picture of Norman telling a story, you'll see that alongside the video, there is also a transcript. And it's got a clever trick, this transcript, because if you're a learner and you're reading and you're listening at the same time, and you come across a word you don't know, you can just click on it, and then lo and behold, on the right-hand side, an instant translation cropped up for that particular word. So that's quite useful for learners. For non-speakers who don't have any Gaelic at all, we've recently taken to subtitling our videos as well as an option. They're not burnt in, but you can click on a button on YouTube to get the subtitles to come up, and they can come up in Gaelic. Here's Flora talking in Gaelic, and there's the Gaelic subtitle for that. But YouTube is such a clever tool these days that you can actually click another button, and then you can get that Gaelic subtitle translated immediately into another language, such as English or French or German or a host of others. So a focus on Gaelic, but not a monolingual focus on Gaelic. We're very much a multilingual project, and that's the way we need to continue. A few more examples of actual content here. The kind of things which we've covered in the past, local history, and there's the land raids story from Alec, which Archie helped me elicit, as far as I recall. Storytelling, another aspect. We've got plenty from Norman, but also other local storytellers, as Maddie knows. Also looking at the way Gaelic has been used in the past, is used now, and maybe in the future. So actually focusing on the language itself, and with speakers across the generations, not just the old, but also the young as well. And the and more ... is also important here. I want to underline that, because this is just a taste, if you like, and we're very open to exploring new topics and new genres as well, if that's the way the workshops develop, as it were. Okay, so what's the plan? Session one, as I said, we want to focus in on the Gaelic crisis in the Vernacular Community Report, and actually get an update from the research team behind that report. And that gives us an opportunity as well from the community to put questions directly to those researchers in Gaelic or English. So that would be a kickoff, if you like, a starting point, so that we're all starting from the same page. In subsequent sessions, maybe another 2 or 3 sessions after that, I'd like to experiment with taking selected extracts from our collection, just as you would artifacts from a museum, to stimulate discussion in Gaelic or reminiscences or new ideas, and the airing of more questions and concerns, so that we can add to the contemporary record of Gaelic speech, Gaelic memories and Gaelic opinions, particularly as they relate to this overall topic of well-being, whether that's as an individual or community level. So that's the participatory aspect to what we're planning or hoping to go through. Behind the scenes, there would be follow-up. I mentioned already the importance of inclusion, so we would want to transcribe and subtitle any recordings that we make, so that any interested member of the community, no matter their skills in Gaelic, can gain an increased knowledge of customs and practices and issues in Gaelic amongst their friends and neighbours. And also, as Jess also mentioned, we're going to need to review the process and evaluate how it's worked to see if it's worth developing this kind of way of working further. Which brings me to my last slide. I hope I haven't gone too far over time. And that's the invitation to everyone here who's a Gaelic speaker to come along to these sessions. We haven't dated any of them yet. We're probably going to run the first one before the summer break and then come back to do the participatory sessions after the summer break. The idea is to, as I say, look at videos or recordings that have been made and see what kind of ideas and memories and thoughts they stimulate, and share those memories and thoughts again in the community. It's a new approach, a new format, if you like, but it's not completely untested. We have tried it out already in English with some clips from Norman being discussed between university partners in English, between UHI ourselves and also partners in university partners in India and Jamaica, and with local community language speakers here in the UK. So very much adhering to this notion that there needs to be ongoing exchange and communication between academy and community if we're going to take things forward in the best possible way. Okay, I'll stop there. I hope it's been reasonably clear. If it hasn't, be happy to take questions, but I think we're saving questions until the end, Mary. Is that right?
That's right. Thank you, Gordon, because it's very, very important that Gaelic lies at the heart of the project, and that we build in over the summer with groups of volunteers some walks to local landmarks, archaeological landmarks, and there will also be a couple of Gaelic events which members of that group can help to plan, so that we put Gaelic firmly on the map. I'll come on now to you, Alan, if you're still there, up in Tomintoul, travelling today. St Andrews have helped us over the years, as has Gordon, with all our digital installations dating back to 2013, when the local school children participated in a virtual St Kilda installation, which has continued to live and is very popular. Over to you, Alan. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I am here. I was on. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Thank you.
And Hopefully you can see me as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Sort of. You're a disappearing man. But let's hear you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Mary. I'm speaking from my phone in Toronto, and I've recently entered the foreign world of iPhones, and so maybe struggling a little bit to understand exactly what's happening, what's going on. I'm not sure what the presentation. Oh, there we go. The presentation is up.
Yeah.
Heritage, language, virtual reality, and well-being. Thank you very much for that really kind introduction, Mary. And myself and my colleagues and the University of St Andrews as a whole is very pleased, proud, and honoured to with our association with North Uist, Taikursura, and in particular with Common Aire and yourself, Mary. So thank you very much for our participation in this project, and it was really pleasing to hear the introduction. Congratulations on your re-election, I nearly said Jessica, but Jess, thank you very much for your introduction. It was great to hear what you had to say about heritage and its relation to well-being. And I'm hoping that we'll learn, a lot more, as we go through and as we go on. My kind of relation with heritage, I come from a kind of more of a technical background, technology background, and have been intrigued by the way in which technologies can enhance engagement with and use of heritage. And I think that it's very true that when we're, as distinct from history, when we're talking about heritage, we are talking about things which impinge directly on who we are, on defining who we are, and not necessarily just as an individual, but also as a community. And I would be so bold as to say, as humanity as well. It's often people see heritage as being, oh, this is what is special about me. But more times than not, I think heritage is as much about what we have in common. It enables us to reach across boundaries and reach across borders. And in that sense, it's very important, I think, in defining humanity. But I think the thing the idea that lies at the heart of heritage, or one of the ideas that lies at the heart of heritage, I think is really important, is that, it's about communication. It's about passing something on. It's about things being passed on from the past to the future, from one generation to the next generation. And of course, when generations communicate, you have to talk each other's languages. And I think that's one of the reasons why technology is important. So some of the younger generations grow up swiping tablets, wearing headsets, playing games on their mobile phones, and all of that sort of stuff. And if we want to communicate heritage from generation to generation, then we have to be able to speak. We have to be able to use those digital literacies or communicate in those digital literacies. So I think that's really, really important. And that's one of the things that we're going to try to facilitate is through this project is kind of using digital technologies to maybe gather up or help define some of the heritage that is important to Uist, to North Uist in particular. I'm not going to define who that is, but we're going to kind of see what comes out. I think that's why mentioned before, it's so important this project is driven by and comes from the community. But one example of ways in which we can do this is looking at, for example, some of the wonderful archaeology and archaeological sites and landscapes that exist in Uist. As a privileged visitor, it does seem to me that the landscapes and the archaeology are defining elements of the place. And this North Uist 360, go to the next project. It's just an example of some of the things that we've done with place and helping bind communities to place. And I think that that's something that we can try to do more of, try to gather together the names and the songs and the stories that are associated with places and associate them with the with pictures. And this North Uist 360 project, there were some beautiful pieces of music that were composed and performed. So that's kind of looking back, some of the things that have happened. And one of the things that we want to do in this project is gather together some of the things that have happened in the past in relation to heritage to create a platform. If we can move on to the next slide, that'd be great. But it's not just about place. Yeah, that's great. And then on to the next one. It's also about things, about objects. They're so often are used in everyday life, and they can become the centre for or the gateway into developing our understanding and developing our stories and conversations about it. And so one of the things that we have done in some of our projects is do some digitization of the impressive collection that Combinatory has, and here doing some 3D digitization, and we hope to do more of that. We hope to digitize more of that collection, but also to reach out and kind of do a sort of antiques roadshow where people can bring their objects along, and we will digitize them and make 3D models of them, and collect whatever relevant stories there are that are associated with them. Because I think when we look at an artifact, it's really a gateway into life. So if we could then move on to the next slide, which is so this is Mary was talking about the stories associated with St Kilda and some of the other projects that we've been involved in. But the idea that heritage, it's not just places and objects, it's also stories, it's also songs, it's the intangible heritage. And one of the great things about this project, is to just move on, was just go to the next slide, that would be great. This is the Voices of St Kilda slide. So this is some of the stories from St Kilda, much of it from a North Uist perspective. If we can go on further. So that's the digital platform that we want to create a digital platform which brings together this heritage that has been created in the past, but also going forward to create game environments, interactive maps, galleries, audio archives, timeline, these sorts of things that help to capture and define what a heritage is, and therefore in doing so addresses connection with place, addresses being part of community, helps overcome social exclusion, promote social inclusion and the like. So if we move on to next. And so one of the things we'll be doing is using scanners and others to do this digitization process, also of recording stories songs and poems, and the next slide. And locating those stories in place. There's been an example. There's been an example of that, and I think that just to kind of draw things towards an end. The technology has changed and is changing. And what we're going to do is on September the 2nd and September the 3rd, we're going to have a face or a festival that is about heritage, but it will be about digitizing. It will be about digitizing places, digitizing objects, recording stories, and recording songs. But not entirely about that. It will also be about people talking to each other, meeting, and there's going to be some great entertainment and great culture at it. So September the 2nd and the 3rd will be a cultural and heritage event that we're hoping will build upon the sort of well-being work that has come before it, and acts a bit of a launch pad into some of the language work that Gordon is going to be doing in the later pieces of the project. So hopefully it will tie together, and we will create some great representations of culture, natural and cultural heritage. Next slide. And one of the things that we are going to do is we're going to try to make use of virtual reality. And sometimes people think, oh, well, you know, the thing about technology is the more advanced it gets, the more complicated it gets. Well, I think that often it can be the other way around. The point about this technology is to make it immersive, to make it simple, to make it engaging. And so what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to make digital representations of heritage that are accessible, that you don't have to have a PhD in computers or a degree in computers or really any experience. You can just put on the headset and you are immersed in an experience which engages and stimulates you. So that's what we're kind of aiming for, about breaking the technology out of the out of its ghetto and making it something that is widely acceptable and engaging. So we'll move on one more. And just a quick plug, once upon a time in the future, there's this conference in Iceland that some of the people involved in this project will be representing at, and I thought I would just put it up. It's going to be a hybrid event, so if you want to come to Reykjavik, please do. Otherwise, it's going to be on Zoom, so you can participate on that. And that's the 16th of June. And maybe we'll get some ideas from that can feed back into this project. I think that the 4 strands of well-being, language. I didn't say at the beginning how the introduction from Gordon was great, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that develops. And certainly we hope that in terms of the digital platform that captures as much heritage